FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. It's Kerry, Lutz, and we are back. Not sure if you've heard about this movement or not. It's known as the Constitutional Sheriff Movement. If you don't live in a big city, if you live in an unincorporated part of your state, like many of you do here in Florida, then you'll probably be dealing with the county sheriff. Many of you feel that the federal government's been trying to do away with sheriffs or marginalize them, take away many of their law enforcement functions. Over the years, it's been happening for sure. Politicize the police department, things of this nature. Well, we've got Sheriff Richard Mack. He's former sheriff of Graham County in Arizona. He's head of the Constitutional Sheriff Movement. Here to educate you about that, let you know what's going on with the movement and why it's so important for you and your family to be involved in this. Sheriff Mack, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks. Appreciate being on. I guess you're in kind of cold country, and I'm in a very warm, wonderful sunshine day out here in Arizona.
Yeah, well, it's about 80 degrees here, so we're not complaining too much.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But, it's amazing the way that law enforcement in the United States has evolved, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, that's a word I use all the time.
Yeah, originally, the sheriff was the law. He was the most important government official, and there was no she, let's face it. There were no female sheriffs in the country. The sheriff was the most important government official and the official that you were most likely to deal with for a variety of factors in your day-to-day existence. Now, of course, things have moved along in many states and in large metropolitan areas. The functions of the sheriff have evolved to enforcing judgments, handling evictions. They've really shifted from law enforcement. In New Jersey, for instance, sheriff really doesn't do much law enforcement at all. In some states, they run the jails. Depends. Mainly rural counties in New York State, they've kept their classical duties. Tell us about this constitutional sheriff movement, what that's about.
Well, I do go through the history of the sheriff, a little bit of what you mentioned, and I've gone through this evolution. In most states, I would say at least about 42, maybe 43 states, the sheriff still is the head of law enforcement for the county. And he does do the other, what do you call them, errands for the court. He does these other duties as far as serving court papers, eviction notices. And if someone is ever involved in a civil lawsuit and you win and the other person refuses to pay, then he will go and take property from that person and sell it and then give it to the person who won in court. So he has a variety of assignments, and I did them all. I ran the jail. We served the papers for the courts. We did all law enforcement activities throughout as you alluded to earlier, the non-incorporated parts of the county. City police handled all of that within the city. However, the sheriff still has concurrent jurisdiction, and the people in the city still elect him because there is a bunch of stuff he does still within and for people within the city limit. As I mentioned, the chief of police does not serve papers, and he does not serve normally orders of the court. And he's not usually the tax collector for the county, and that is another job that I had and didn't like a lot of those. But if someone is murdered and it's in the non-incorporated parts of the county, the sheriff's office handles it. And we will work with other agencies, state, local, sometimes federal, even though my organization has as a theme, if not a motto, that we will stand against the incursions and crimes committed by the IRS. or other federal agencies. There is no sheriff in this country that has any kind of obligation whatsoever to go along with federal bureaucrats who break the law or violate rights of citizens within his county. Madison and Jefferson said over 2 centuries ago that the states are duty-bound to be checks and balances against the government agencies, and they mentioned the federal government in particular, and to prevent the federal government from victimizing, that's a quote, victimizing their citizens. So it is a huge job. He has huge power, and one of the reasons is, first of all, the historical aspect of the office of sheriff, and you're right, he was the number one executive of the county, just like the sheriff of Nottingham. He was the most powerful person in the county. Whether he's good, bad, or indifferent, he still had a lot of power. And they still do today. It's just that a lot of sheriffs in that evolution, a lot of sheriffs have become a little bit ignorant of the power they do have. One of the other key components of the power they have is that they are elected by, for, and of the people. And therein lies their real power because they report directly to the power source. And so it is a huge position. It has always been that he has been the keeper of the peace. That is what he is today, the keeper of the peace, the protector of the people. And for any of these sheriffs, I'm going to say this again, for any sheriff or any other law enforcement officer that says they have no authority to stand against the crimes of the IRS or other federal agencies is just ridiculous and absurd and just a bald-faced untrue on its face. I mean, it's just untrue. It's not reality. And for a sheriff to say, well, a good thing I don't have to get involved in that, but I will recommend a good lawyer for you. The IRS wins either way. If you have to go fight them in court and hire a lawyer for the next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, which is not uncommon with them, to fight people that long, they completely destroy you. And the IRS has as a motto, if you don't do what we say, we will destroy you. We will ruin you. And all of that has got to stop. That should not exist in America.
I totally agree with you there. So, Sheriff Mack, if the IRS came looking for one of your constituents, and that's what they in fact were, because they elected you, and they wanted to raid somebody's business or whatever, would you render them any aid?
No. In fact, I would do just the opposite. I would say, hey, what are you doing here? Let me see your papers. Let me see probable cause. Let me see your due process. Let me see your duly signed warrants. And let me see this. Where did you get jurisdiction? And if they don't have proper jurisdiction in these matters, and if they did anything illegal to get to that point, then not only am I not going to assist, I'm going to stand in the way. I'm going to interpose, and that's another word that Jefferson and Madison used, interpose our power to prevent the people from being victimized. And this is one of the greatest checks and balances that is established within our Constitution and the 10th Amendment, I might add. The enforcement of state sovereignty is really the last solution we have left to stop this monstrous Goliath out-of-control government from Washington, D.C. that we have destroying our Constitution and destroying our liberties today. And people say there's nothing we can do about it. That is true. There is nothing you can do about it in Washington, D.C. Congress will not stop the IRS. The president will not stop the IRS. IRS, Lois Lerner, or anybody else, director of the IRS, are not going to rein this rogue Gestapo-like agency in. So how do we do it?
Let me ask you a question.
We must do it in our counties and states.
If Lois Lerner, and you were still sheriff in Graham County, if Lois Lerner paid a visit to your county, would you lock her up?
Well, I would, in the sense that I would have to first investigate and prove that she'd actually done something to somebody in my county. And so primarily I would conduct a proper investigation. If anyone had been abused, like many that testified before Congress, that these Tea Party groups and others who had been abused by not only the IRS, but the IRS had complicity
right,
from the FBI. So yes, the FBI was complicit in helping the IRS harass a lot of these people who were merely exercising freedom of speech and freedom of association that's guaranteed by the Constitution. Mm-hmm. So if I could prove that they had done that to anybody in my county, if she stopped by, I most definitely would, and hopefully get the support of the county attorney to actually prosecute. And this is a thing, though, that happens all the time, and I want to make sure that all your listeners understand this. The IRS conducting random, baseless audits, financial audits on American citizens, is against the law in America. Those are fishing expeditions. They are completely without due process and probable cause, and those two are requirements of the Fourth Amendment. And so if they don't have warrants, and if they don't have due process and probable cause, and I find that out when they come to serve warrants and destroy a man's livelihood and take his property and take his land and take his bank accounts, I'm not going to allow it. It's based on a warrant that would be as a result of a random audit, which is illegal. And even if the Supreme Court says, "Oh, we're going to make an exception for the IRS because, the Constitution applies, but the IRS just simply wouldn't be able to. It would handcuff the IRS. It would shackle the IRS's efforts to collect." That's exactly what the Constitution is supposed to do, you idiot Supreme Court. And yes, some of this has been allowed by the courts. But you know what? The United States Supreme Court does not run my sheriff's office. And I was elected by for the people of my county, and I promised in God's name that I would uphold and defend the Constitution. That is what I'll do. You want somebody else that will go along to get along and go along with all the destruction of constitutional freedoms? You might want to elect somebody else. But I will stand and keep my word and do what I promised the people that I would do in the first place, and I will take action against the IRS or the EPA or the FDA or Army Corps of Engineers, which I actually did, by the way, when I was sheriff. They wouldn't allow us to fix a bridge after a flood we had, and a year later the bridge still wasn't fixed, and the Board of Supervisors, county commissioners, voted 3-0 unanimously to fix the bridge. Then the Army Corps of Engineers threatened to arrest them, to arrest the county commissioners, literally threatened to arrest them, threatened to fine the county $50,000 a day, and they threatened to arrest all the maintenance workers. So now I got involved. I wasn't involved until then. And then I threatened to arrest the Army Corps of Engineers, and I said, "You're not arresting anybody in my county. I'm already suing the federal government on another issue if you want to add this to it." But I said, just don't make any mistake. I will arrest you if you try to make any of these arrests that you threaten. So bottom line is we fixed the bridge. Nobody went to jail. Nobody paid a dime in fines, and the Army Corps of Engineers left.
Hey, and there's another issue, Sheriff. The federal government, the Western states, they own the majority of the land, and they don't take very good care of it. They have arbitrary laws governing preservation of species that aren't endangered. And we had that whole incident with Cliven Bundy where they're doing all these deals to benefit the former majority leader of the Senate. How do you deal with them in that situation?
Well, you do the same thing, and you do exactly the opposite that Sheriff Gillespie, who is now retired, thank goodness, but I don't believe his replacement is going to be any better. It was one of his top aides. But Sheriff Gillespie, during the fiasco at the Bundy Ranch, which turned out peacefully, but just through the grace of God and a miraculous effort by Deputy Tom Roberts to save lives and to stop and to prevent the shooting and to stop the federal government with their hired mercenaries, stop them from doing it, from killing people. But Sheriff Gillespie actually announced publicly that he had no authority to get involved, that he had no authority to keep his oath of office, which is quite an irony to say. He had no authority to keep the peace, which is a malfeasance of office. He had no authority to protect the Bundys, who were his constituents. And this is so ridiculous again, this is a great example of what a sheriff should not be. And we've used him in my book, my recent book called Are You a David? And I want to ask Sheriff Gillespie and every citizen of this country and every sheriff, is your sheriff a David? And Sheriff, are you a David? Do you have the courage to go against Goliath? And do you even know who Goliath is today? And that's what the book clearly points out. And that is available, and people can get more information about all of this at CSPOA.org. Stands for Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, CSPOA.org. And quite frankly, in the book, I ask, do you have the guts to stand against the IRS? I want to ask every sheriff. I want to ask every scholar of the Constitution. I want to ask every lawyer, county attorney, please tell me, legally and lawfully, who has the responsibility to protect the people in your county or in your state from criminal activity that might involve federal bureaucracy, federal bureaucrats? Are you telling me that federal bureaucrats can come into your county and do whatever the hell they want? Is that what you're telling me? And you will do nothing to protect the citizens from gun confiscation, from cattle confiscation like they did at Bundy's, or just the overall plundering and pillaging of federal agents? You're going to tell them they can come in and do whatever the hell they want? Or are you going to be just the opposite of what Sheriff Gillespie did, which Sheriff Tony DeMeo did in Nye County, Nevada, when they came to take Wayne Hague, H-A-G-E, Wayne Hague's cattle? Very same case, very same situation. They come in and they want to take the cattle there. They took some until the sheriff found out about it, and then the sheriff got involved. And the sheriff, the next time they came to take the cattle, he told the BLM and the Forest Service, you're not taking anybody's cattle. This is a complete and utter illegal action on your part, and I will not allow it to happen in my county. And the BLM actually threatened the sheriff and said, we're going to come back and we're going to bring our SWAT team. And Sheriff Tony DeMeo responded, fine, I have one too. And they never came back. Yeah. And Wayne Hague's property was protected. And there's another thing your listeners need to do. You need to Google this case. Again, Wayne Hague, H-A-G-E. He and his family fought the BLM and Forest Service for 35 years to keep what was already his, that the county ended up trying to defend, and they should have stopped this whole thing, and the state should have stopped it because it was completely bogus. And when they went to court, the Hague family won, and the BLM and Forest Service still went after him after that. And Judge Robert Jones, federal district judge, told the BLM that they committed all sorts of crimes, including racketeering and criminal conspiracy to destroy the land rights and water rights of the Hague family. This battle went on so long that Wayne Hague's first wife died, his second wife died, he died, and his son Wayne Jr. and his daughter Ramona kept the fight alive in their dad's memory. He had to start representing himself because he ran out of money. And this is the thing. It's an unfair battle, no matter how you try to fight for your rights against the IRS or federal agencies, because they have an endless supply of money and lawyers.
Yeah, we know that's true, for sure, Sheriff.
But you need to see that case, and it's in my book. I document it in my book, Are You a David? The Wayne Hague case is in there because it is such a telling example of the lawlessness of our own federal government, and that nobody will do anything about it.
We know this is true. We've seen it over and over and over again. What do you think is going to be the upshot of Cliven Bundy? They're going to come back for more?
I would be really surprised if they didn't. Everybody, the Bundys all think that they're going to sometime. I keep in pretty close touch with Ammon Bundy. That's Cliven's son, and he was on TV quite a bit. And in fact, he was the one. Well, Ammon was the one that was tased and kicking the dog at the same time. And when I grow up, I want to be as tough as that guy. I mean, usually when you're being tased, you fall down and you're not able to kick a dog that's trying to attack you at the same time. Mm-hmm. But he's actually defending himself against the dog and pulling a taser hook out of his neck.
That's impressive. Yeah. I got to say, it's pretty impressive the way they stood up, and the fact that all those people came to their aid and said enough. And it's been a year. The courts have kind of thrown up their hands and said, look, we gave you the judgment. We gave you the order. It's up to you now. Don't bother us with it. They don't want any further involvement. So gave them the court order.
And a lot of people don't know this about the Bundy situation. Right when it was the most tense and the protesters were moving in to try to release the cattle out of this makeshift corral that the BLM made. And they made another makeshift corral. BLM also established a free speech zone where citizens could exercise free speech. Literally in America, a free speech zone. And if you didn't stay within the corral to do your free speech stuff, you would be arrested. Yeah. And in fact, David Bundy was arrested and beat up and then released without charges for whatever the federal government wanted to do. But Deputy Tom Roberts, when the order to shoot, or in other words, the order to kill the unarmed protesters, most were unarmed, some were not, but they weren't marching up there with their guns in their hand. They had them on their hip. But most of them were unarmed, and the order to kill them was given. Deputy Tom Roberts from the Clark County Sheriff's Office put himself in the middle, put himself in the way, literally interposed on behalf of the people, and stood there and told the BLM to stand down and to take their hired guns and leave, and that they didn't want that they were going to be on video for the rest of their lives killing unarmed people.
Arrogance.
And they backed down.
Children.
And
children
left.
For crying out loud here, Sheriff.
Yeah.
How do you,
exactly.
How do you reconcile that one? Now that would have. And there would have been plenty of dead BLM people as well, because the Patriots there had the higher ground. I don't know what they were thinking. This was not well thought out by the government. Not a good place to make a stand. They might have been able to pull it in Waco, where there weren't any cameras and no internet and no tweets, no Facebook, but here. They weren't going to look too good. No, it wasn't. And it was really a very tense and volatile situation that ended peacefully, and we're really grateful for that. And we're really grateful for one deputy standing and actually doing his job and defending these protesters. One man with courage. If it hadn't been for him, people would have been killed. One man with courage is a majority. You know that. Well, Sheriff, know you're going to want to find out more about what the sheriff is doing and get involved. We didn't even really get into a lot of other issues about Obamacare and things of that nature. But Sheriff, your website, your book, tell us where we connect with you. Again, the best book in the country about the true Goliath today and our solution to stop him, which is peaceful and effective. Are You a David? And just get that at CSP as in Paul, POA, CSPOA, CSPOA.org, CSPOA.org. All right. And as always, you'll find the links to that on the website, financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Make sure you sign up for our free webinars coming up, as well as the newsletter. Got so much going on. And make sure you take a look at that website while you're at it. We've got articles dealing exactly with what the sheriff has been talking about. And Sheriff Mack, you're a real patriot. And thanks so much for standing up when so many others have shut up. And we'll definitely be talking with you again. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate it, Kerry. Thanks much.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.